When somebody dies, the immediate family is usually spared the grim task of arranging the final ceremony. Relatives and friends normally take care of everything. But with so many having been killed, the actual funerals themselves have become something of a torture. In the first days of war, coffins were in very short supply.
We didn't have enough coffins. The electricity was switched off and all the workshops were closed. Then a few days later, a batch of coffins arrived from Vladikavkaz as humanitarian aid.
But as the dead are laid to rest, the survivors leave to fight another day. Even after the fighting had ended, Tskhinval hospitals reported a steep rise in the number of patients suffering and dying from heart attacks. This pharmacy, which didn't close even during the assault, is now almost completely out of stock.
Of course, people mostly need cardiac and soothing pills, especially because people were in damp basements. Now we have a strong demand for anti-rheumatic drugs.
While medicine is being distributed free of charge, pharmacy staff are trying to keep track of who needs what.
We are required to ask our customers about their home address, and this simple question brings some people to the brink of hysteria. What home, they say? Everything's been burned.
This young mother came to get some painkillers. Her migraines just won't go away, she says, and her baby has become restless. It's no longer war, but peace still very far away. Silence, followed by the throng of heavy artillery. This was how the war came to South Ossetia, throwing people out of their beds and off the course of normal life. For Valery Gergiev, one of Russia's most renowned conductors, this concert was his way of saying goodbye to the old Tskhinval. Vibrant and colorful as it was just a month ago, the city now smells of decomposing human flesh.
I am Ossetian myself. I came today with the world-famous Mariinsky Oblast to Tskhinval to see with my own eyes the horrible destruction of this city. It was a huge act of aggression on the part of the Georgian army. This is not yet a known story to the world.
Some in the audience later compared this concert to a long-awaited communion. For several days after the bombardment began, Tskhinval was left without religious services. When the violence subsided, we found the province's head priest walking around the town to check what was left of his once large flock.
60% of my parishioners were killed, annihilated. They particularly targeted churches because they knew that people tried to hide there.
Even priests found it hard to preach forgiveness in Tskhinval. With so many killed, the animosity is still fierce. Even after his death, this Georgian soldier didn't stop being an enemy. It was Georgian soldiers who killed Evelina's son. It happened 16 years ago during the first round of clashes between Georgia and South Ossetia. Over the past few weeks, Evelina, a nurse at one of Tskhinval's hospitals, had to relieve her loss over and over again.
During the bombardment, many of the injured were received were 20 to 21-year-old boys. They were so young, like my son when he was killed. There were no boys left under the age of 25.
The cemetery where Evelina's son is buried was also damaged during the assault. Even the dad weren't spared. The traditional view that men fight in wars and women suffer the losses no longer holds true. According to South Ossetian officials, female soldiers, including snipers, fought on the Georgian side, and on the Russian side too, the number of female troops was higher than in any other conflict. Meet Katya, 25 years old, single, a junior sergeant. She entered the Russian army 6 years ago to continue the family tradition and to escape unemployment in her home city of Vladikavkaz.
My father was a military man. I decided to follow in his footsteps. Mother was against it, while father at first was against it too, but he later grew accustomed to the idea.
Her battlefield is this makeshift bakery, where she spends more than 12 hours a day.
At first it was hard, but now it's okay.
With her unit stationed deep in the rear, Katya hasn't seen much of the fighting. Yet the vintage decor of the room she's sharing with her fellow soldiers serves as a reminder of how this conflict began. Joseph Stalin was one of the first leaders to proclaim South Ossetia part of Georgia. Himself half Georgian, half Ossetian, Stalin didn't have any qualms about changing the administrative borders. After all, during the Soviet period, both Georgia and South Ossetia were part of a much larger country.
She's a Georgian, and he's an Ossetian.
Back then, Milena Razmadze was teaching geography at a high school. In her photo album, the Georgian and Ossetian students seem blissfully unaware of each other's ethnicity. This issue only came up in the early 1990s when Eduard Gamsakhourdia came to power in Georgia.
Gamsakhourdia was saying all the time that Georgia was for Georgians. I remember one day I came to my class and asked, how could this be? There was a Georgian boy sharing a desk with an Ossetian girl. Should we kill one of them?
Born in Georgia, Milena moved to Tskhinval more than 50 years ago after marrying a South Ossetian.
We got divorced, but I never thought about leaving Tskhinval. This is my home.
But after the Georgian incursion, thousands of ethnic Georgians who lived in South Ossetia prior to the conflict had to flee their homes, fearing reprisals from their South Ossetian neighbors.
Before the Georgian assault, this village about 15 kilometers away from Tskhinval was populated mainly by ethnic Georgians. Well, you cannot find a single soul here anymore, and most of the houses are set on fire.
The Georgians fled in a hurry, leaving behind most of their belongings. Some even abandoned their elderly parents. When Russian emergency workers entered this village, they didn't find a single person under 60.
How are you here? Do you have food? Bread?
A little bit.
We'll give you bread.
With hundreds killed and the city of Tskhinval in ruins, no wonder